to Rare on Air, the monthly podcast from EURORDIS-Rare Diseases Europe. I am your host, Julien Poulain, and once a month, we will be exploring the challenges, experiences, and successes of people who live with the rare condition. In less than a few months' time, between the 15th and 16th of May, ECRD 2024, the biennial European Conference on Rare Diseases and Orphan Products, will be taking place, both online and in Brussels. Our biennial ECRD event is recognised as the largest patient-led rare disease policy-shaping event in Europe. The conference will be a melting pot of ideas and collaboration, with over 1,000 participants expected. As preparations for ECRD 2024 ramp up, I speak to three people about the event. Sharon Ashton, EURORDIS' Open Academy and Events Director, who talks about how ECRD has grown and evolved over the years. Valentina Bottarelli, EURORDIS' Public Affairs Director and Head of European Advocacy, who talks about why ECRD 2024 will be particularly impactful, with it taking place right before elections to the European Parliament. And finally, I speak to Gabriella Almberg, Global Head of Rare Disease Policy and Public Affairs at UCB, and a representative of the pharmaceutical industry on the ECRD 2024 Programme Committee. Gabriella shares why the event and the opportunity it presents to meet and learn from patients themselves is of such great value and importance to the developers of rare disease medicines. Sharon, Valentina, and Gabby, thank you so much for joining me today.
Excited to be here. Thank you, Julien.
Thank you, Julien. Very happy to be here.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. Happy to have a conversation with all of you today.
Thanks. It's great to have you all. So, Sharon, how would you describe ECRD to someone unfamiliar with the conference?
So the European Conference on Rare Diseases and Orphan Products, so known as ECRD, is a biennial event, and it's been running since 2001. And it's really recognized as the largest patient-led, multi-stakeholder rare disease policy-shaping event held in Europe. So in a nutshell, it's kind of like a must-attend event for anyone wishing to remain informed and actively engaged in pioneering solutions to improve the lives of people living with a rare disease. And the kind of the key words that I would like to zoom in on or double click on are threefold. So the first one is patient-led. This is the only conference organized by EURORDIS. It's organized on behalf of the whole rare disease patient community. And of particular note, the three co-chairs of the ECRD 2024 Programme Committee are all patient advocates. They are Adela Odrioka from the Disability and Patient Advocate Group in the Czech Republic. There are also Klaas Rohl. He's the president of the NF Kinder Association in Austria. That's the neurofibromatosis. And then there's Eva Schoters, the director of Radiorg, so the umbrella organization in Belgium. And she's also the mother of a teenage son living with tuberous sclerosis complex. So she also chairs that association. So as you can see, they represent different disease areas, including rare cancers, and different countries. The second double click is on multi-stakeholder. So through this conference, EURORDIS really harnesses the power of our extensive network of partners, of stakeholders, and participants. And when I say participants, I mean patient advocates, people living with a rare disease, clinicians and healthcare professionals, member state representatives, regulators and policymakers. And we all kind of come together to activate and drive positive change for the community. And the third zoom in is on policy shaping. So this event is really unique in as much as it's really an instrumental tool used to achieve our policy objectives for people living with a rare disease. So essentially, the three things to remember about ECRD is that it's patient-led, it's multi-stakeholder, and we're shaping policy for rare diseases.
That's pretty impressive, the fact that it captures so much of the rare disease ecosystem, but especially the fact that it's guided by the full broad range of the rare disease community and patients themselves. So you mentioned, of course, that it's guided by our own organisation, EURORDIS. How did you first become acquainted with EURORDIS? How long have you been at the organisation? And what motivated your involvement in the organisation?
So yeah, I first became acquainted with EURORDIS back in 2010, actually, when they were hiring their first ever events manager. And I was specifically hired to organize the EURORDIS Black Pearl Awards, which has been going since 2012. And so my background, in fact, before I came to EURORDIS was in event management, but also as a wedding planner. So I know that our CEO, Jan, at the time, who was one of the interviewers in the process, was quite pleased about that and thought that that would fit nicely with the Black Pearl Awards. So that was a plus. But of course, I was also hired to organize the European conference too. And I can't believe actually that it's already been, 13 years since I've been at the organization. So this will be my 8th conference that I'm experiencing. Yeah.
Is there anything you miss about wedding planning? Dare I ask?
In a nutshell, no.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
No, I mean, except for, of course, the opportunity to participate in such an important event, right, in people's lives. So I do have some very nice memories from that period.
So when did you attend your first inaugural ECRD, and what lasting impressions do you have from that experience?
Yeah, so the first one I attended was in 2010. It was held in Krakow in Poland. So I only arrived 3 months before that event actually took place. So much of the planning had already happened by then. And the internal project lead at the time was actually our colleague François Houillet, who is also still at EURORDIS. So just from an event management perspective, it was really challenging because for those of you who may remember, in spring of 2010, the volcano erupted in Iceland.
Oh, God.
And there was the huge volcanic ash cloud that progressively moved east from Iceland. And so by the time of our conference, in fact, it really caused a lot of disruption in travel. So we were scrambling to get staff, to get speakers, and of course, participants there. So from an event management perspective, it was tricky. But content-wise, I would say 2 things really stood out for me. The first being that there was a real high-level policy representation at the event from several member states. Several ministers of health from different member states were present, as well as high-level people from the European Commission. So it's always had that strong kind of political core and drive. And then secondly, I really sensed this feeling of community and solidarity and this kind of determination and desire really to work together in collaboration with others to achieve our goals.
So how has ECRD evolved over the years, and what aspects of it have undergone the most significant changes? Has it been its format or its focus?
Well, maybe first of all, I'll say what has actually remained the same. So its mission, I would say, has remained the same from the beginning. You know, we really do provide this kind of state of the art of the rare disease environment, the monitoring, the kind of checking progress. So this conference really provides this unique forum to share experiences and exchange ideas with each other. That learning from each other concept is really integral to the conference. And it also still covers a broad range of topics. So for example, at next year's conference, we'll be covering 6 specific topic areas, which are research and innovation, diagnosis and screening, access to highly specialized care, access to treatments, mental well-being and holistic care, and the role and importance of national plans and strategies for rare diseases. So it really does remain a kind of a highly anticipated event on people's calendars. And then when we come to what has changed, I would say, first of all, its size. So from gathering just over 200 people at the first conference in Copenhagen in 2001, we now welcome over 1,000 participants. And due to advancing technologies, we're also now able to be more inclusive. And that's one of the main reasons why we have decided that this next conference will be run as our first fully hybrid event. So with people joining us in person in Brussels and also online. So we'll have dedicated hosts for both of these audiences. And we've designed the whole flow of the conference in each session in a way that really enables equal participation from both of those audiences. Just to give you a few sneak previews, I guess we'll be having voting on poster pictures. We'll be having scavenger hunts around the posters, facilitated networking opportunities. There will also be community-led discussions. So you will have, in fact, the opportunity or possibility to propose topics yourselves for those small group discussions. We'll also have on the interactive platform that we will be running a leaderboard activity. So there will even be a prize for the most active on the platform afterwards. So yeah, as well as lots of other fun kind of surprises and moments of inspiration and delight. And also importantly, in fact, talking about accessibility, we're planning to provide subtitling of all sessions for the online participants in up to 12 languages. So really placing more emphasis on the accessibility, but also on accessibility for people with disabilities. I hope it will be our most accessible event since its inception.
Wow, that sounds not only like the program is going to be very comprehensive and wide-ranging, it sounds like the whole event is going to be more accessible than ever, but also quite exciting and fun. So it's at this point, actually, that I would like to bring Vale into the conversation. So Vale, could you explain why the timing of ECRD 2024 holds particular significance, perhaps given the political timelines at the EU level?
Yes, sure, Julien. We heard from Sharon there are already many reasons to be excited next year, but let me add that 2024 is a year of change in the European institutions and therefore for the European citizens. So the conference, the ECRD 2024, couldn't come at a more crucial and consequential time. We need to know that it takes place only 3 weeks before the election of the European Parliament. So the 3 weeks before all EU citizens place their vote to decide who should represent them for the next 5 years. So this is not only important for the Parliament itself, but also because it's crucial to designate those who are going to be the new European commissioners. So the new college of 27 commissioners that will be appointed right after that, based on the results of the elections. And the new Parliament will also have to approve this European Commission with a vote. So basically, this is the year the new European leadership will be created. So a new European Parliament, new European Commission that will drive policy and legislation basically until the end of the decade. The newly appointed Commission has a very important job to perform as soon as they are in office. They have to drive a proposal for an EU 7-year budget, which you can imagine is going to be crucial for all the spending priorities of the European Union. All this to say that you can imagine that we as the rare disease community have high expectations from this new leadership, because they have a very important job to perform and to accomplish immediately after the conference. From this new leadership, we also expect they undertake and bring to completion what's already going on, big legislative work, like just to mention one, I'm sure familiar to all, the revision of the pharmaceutical legislation. But we also expect that they bring to fruition the recommendations of the Rare 2030 Foresight study, a study in which the entire rare disease community was involved. The conference takes place also at another crucial time for the European member states, because we will have the 6-month rotating presidency of the European Council held by the Belgians. And another reason to be excited is that the conference is organized under the auspices of the Belgian presidency of the European Council.
So thanks, Vale. The conference is perfectly timed to be more impactful than ever. Of course, Sharon mentioned some of the key aspects of the conference's program. Can you maybe outline for us what will be the primary policy objectives and asks presented at the conference and discussed by people joining?
Well, the primary policy objective of ECRD, let me start with that, are rooted in the recommendations of Rare 2030, the Foresight study I was talking about. But EURORDIS continues to build on this comprehensive review of the strategy for rare diseases. In particular, one recommendation is very important. There are 8 key Rare 2030 policy recommendations, but they all revolve around one, a central one, the establishment of a new long-term European policy framework, which we often refer to as the European Action Plan for Rare Diseases. This is what we want to achieve. And such a policy framework would be something that integrates the European policies and national strategies from across all countries in Europe. It's a strategy aimed to achieve measurable goals, to improve health and well-being of people living with rare diseases, of course, but also their inclusion in societies, and ultimately aiming to reduce inequality across Europe. Achieving this is still the primary strategic objective of the conference and, of course, of EURORDIS alike. We are quite hopeful, optimistic about the momentum. We recently heard the Health Commissioner, the outgoing Health Commissioner, Stella Kyriakides, saying something which is very important for us. If we were capable of doing what we did for cancers, we can do it for rare diseases. And we know that this commission adopted a comprehensive cancer plan for the European Union. So that confirms that there is political momentum towards this ambitious goal of having a comprehensive strategy. We know that, of course, the rare disease community at large is ready, but also the policymakers. And it's encouraging to hear that from the Commission, who should be leading the preparation of this plan. But let me also say that ECRD is a great opportunity to translate this momentum into comprehensive actions for the next cohort of policymakers, of course. But to do so, we'll address the key policy areas or pillars, if you will. They're part of this broader policy framework.
That's interesting. And it's interesting, of course, that you mentioned the recent comment from Stella Kyriakides, the European Commissioner for Health. Of course, like you say, she did recently say that if we did a big strategy for cancer that was well-resourced and impactful and involved a very comprehensive set of actions, then we can do that for rare diseases. Like you mentioned, she is outgoing, but I guess a key purpose of this conference will be to ensure that that momentum towards a European action plan for rare diseases is carried over into the next cohort of European policymakers. So, Sharon, I understand that you may in fact have a neat way of capturing how participants of ECRD 2024 will help affect change in terms of these policy areas.
Because I love acronyms, we would like anyone coming to the conference to actually make a pledge. So pledge meaning P representing prepare. So in the run-up to the conference, we will be running some special podcasts dedicated to the topics around the conference, but also some pre-conference webinars and pre-reads. So we would like you to come prepared to the event. L is for listen. So we would like you to really listen to the conversations and the perspectives, other people's perspectives and different stakeholder perspectives. E is for engage. So really engaging in the conversations and the discussions to be able to then define, help us to define, to co-create these policy asks that we will be then circulating to a broader community and especially the European Commission. G is for grow. So we would really like to grow the momentum behind these asks and these policy recommendations that we would like to make. And E is for execute. With the help of the community, we would really like to make this impactful and provide that information to the Commission.
That's a brilliant acronym, and it perfectly captures how active the conference will be rather than just being a passive event. So it's at this point that I would actually like to speak to Gabi Almberg. A lot is going on in the space of pharmaceuticals right now, especially with the reforms to the general pharmaceutical legislation. Gabi, have you had many experiences with ECRD in the past? And what has been your impression of the biennial conference?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks, Julien and Sharon and Vale for having me here today. I'm sort of the newbie in a way in this whole sort of format of the program committee, and I'm learning new things every day. And I think perhaps that's also what I can highlight in terms of my past experience as well. So I indeed represent in the program committee of the ECRD, the sort of broader European industry. So it's really the three key major trade associations, FBI, Europa Bio and UCOPI. But of course, I'm also sitting sitting in my own sort of seat, heading up policy and public affairs for UCB. And UCB, as you may know, is a company that has a strong sort of foothold in neurology and immunology in the past. But we are, with our sort of heritage there, moving into rare diseases. And that's a development that's happened over the past few years. So my personal experience with ECRD is actually, I'm probably one of a little bit more the newcomers, and I certainly participated in the last edition in 2021. And I think the one thing that struck me is something, to go back to what Sharon mentioned earlier, is really the learning aspect. When you're a company moving into such a complex area where you have a strong, well, I have to say, an incredibly strong and passionate rare disease ecosystem and community, there really is a lot of, I think, listening that needs to be done. And I think that the ECRD, as part of my impression 2 years back, or actually 1 year back now, is really, it's a great synthesis of sort of a summary of what are the absolute key aspects and blockers and bottlenecks that we're looking at today from a policy perspective, and processes, not just at European level, but also at national level. And there are so many different factors and different elements that needs to play in hand. And it's quite difficult and confusing as you come in, as industry, trying to sort of pinpoint, all right, where is it that we can provide value? Where is it that we can collaborate in a constructive way with the patient community before we start sort of elbowing, rather than having a sort of, bull in a china shop kind of approach to really sort of, and I want to say as well that it was so clear from the ECRD, the last edition, that there's so much movement and there's so much achievement that has been done already. We have a long way and a long path ahead of us, of course, some of the things that Vale has outlined already, but there's been so much movement and I feel a lot of momentum. So I think the fact that we can download that history as well as UCB, but also as a reminder for that broader industry, because of course our trade associations have been highly engaged with EURORDIS and the broader community for a long time. But to play on these sort of different perspectives, I think is hugely important. And that's something that I was very impressed with looking at the last edition. And to some extent also now, because, I feel very privileged being invited to the program committee, and there's a big learning journey. And I think I underestimated probably the amount of preparation and strategic thinking that really goes into this process to bring all of these topics to fruition in the ECRD, and to make that a forum that becomes educational, valuable, inspirational for all of the stakeholders that join this forum.
Interesting. If I may ask you a little bit further, why is it essential for industry representatives to engage with and learn from people themselves who live with rare diseases? And why would you perhaps encourage other industry professionals to attend our next ECRD?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that I sort of concluded and derived very, very early on is really that, if we're going to address the 95% that is today untreated, that does not have the attention and that does not have any sort of recourse for having a better sort of quality of life, that really means that it needs to be done in collaboration. And I think from that perspective, industry is a major player in finding a lot of these solutions, but it's something that we need to do very collaboratively, and we need to understand and we need to listen, not just, of course, the EURORDIS patient community, but also the other stakeholders that is part of this ecosystem. So the various KOLs, but the decision makers, both at national and European level. And, I think that's also evidenced by the plethora and wealth of different initiatives that's currently ongoing. EURORDIS, of course, being a very significant participant and leader in a lot of these different collaborations. And so, simply from that perspective, that's, I feel, where industry really needs to take the time to take these conversations, to listen, to learn, to contribute, and to be challenged and to challenge the community overall. Because at the end of the day, we're all, working towards the same objectives. And so it's going to be a bumpy road. There's so many different puzzle pieces that need to fit into the larger puzzle. But I think that the ECRD is a forum where we can also challenge each other to make sure that, we course correct when needed, that there's been a critical assessment or review or conversation that has led up to whatever the conclusion or the focus will be. And I think here, industry should feel that they have that responsibility and find their place essentially in that ecosystem. And in the areas where we sit on perhaps greater knowledge around sort of the development of new innovations and new treatments. I think that's where we can be quite purposeful in the collaboration that we have and co-designing and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve together.
Absolutely. No, that's a really interesting point about the conference.
And actually, sorry, Julien, I just realized as well that I wanted to, even from, so, you have people like myself who is really, this is sort of what I do. This is my day job. It's something that I'm confronted with and exposed to every day. And so it's sort of where I feel comfortable. But of course, pharmaceutical companies and industry, they tend to be relatively large operations and organizations, and not everyone has that external focus. And I think the ECRD is absolutely an opportunity for colleagues across the industry that is not necessarily focusing on the policy aspect to really engage and listen and learn and to understand how they work fit into the bigger picture. And that also includes the leadership of the industry. So speaking on behalf of UCB, I know that, our CEO, our rare disease leadership has found it incredibly impressive and very enlightening to make sure that they have that reminder of how we need to work as a company, how we need to move forward as part of that rare disease ecosystem.
That's really interesting and also quite promising that that's their perspective and perception of initiatives like this. So, Gabby, what are you most looking forward to about ECRD 2024?
If listening to Sharon going through all of the different topics that we're going to address, it's quite difficult to choose, actually, because there's so much, and I'm involved in a lot of these preparations. But I think maybe if I look at it from more high level, I think the ECRD and the broad community, which includes decision makers also in the countries, I think I really look forward to understanding and seeing how the countries engage with this and what their current thinking is, because as Vale mentioned, we're at a political critical point where we're looking at, a new EU legislature to be elected with the European Parliament, but also with the European Commission, to sort of make sure and understand where their thinking is, because the expectation of the community is really for them to pick up the torch and to move this momentum forward for the next step. So that is one thing that I'm really excited to listen to the various, politicians and ministries for health and country leaders and decision makers. And another point, actually, because as I mentioned before, it's that multi-stakeholder collaboration that is sort of the key ingredient for success. And over the years, UCB has started to engage and commit to quite a few of these different platforms and alliances. And so for me, it's also going to be very interesting to see sort of the progress of these various initiatives, but also then have a confirmation that this is still sort of the route that the broader community feels that we need to focus on, do a little bit of pressure testing and sort of feedback moving forward. I think that's also something, because there's been so much activity and excitement and sort of passion in the work that's been done so far. So I think having that transparency, but also sort of the opportunity to present that more to the broader community is hugely important. And I also look forward to understanding or sort of hearing what the feedback is on these aspects, because I think that will be very important for the success moving forward.
Definitely. And of course, as you say, the political context and the engagement with policymakers, just as with patients, actually, and seeing how that all plays out will be very central to the value of ECRD 2024.
Absolutely.
So finally, some key dates are approaching, I believe, and preparation for the conference is underway. Sharon, if people want to join the conference and get involved, what should they keep an eye out for?
Thank you, Julien. So our main call to action right now is poster abstract submissions. So they are open, and we encourage patient groups, academics, healthcare professionals, industry, and all other interested parties having conducted research or studies on rare diseases or public health projects to submit a poster abstract for the conference. And the other upcoming news is that registration will open on the 6th of December. And if you don't want to miss any updates, you can sign up to our newsletter via the official website, which is rare-diseases.eu. So I really look forward to seeing, hopefully, many of our listeners now, either in Brussels or online with us next May, the 15th and 16th of May. And please do spread the word. I mean, the more people who come, the more momentum we will garner, the more impactful our pledge will be to the Commission, but also the more change will happen on a community and a personal level. So please do join us.
Well, I will definitely be there, and I will note 6th of December in the calendar already.
Thank you, Gabby.
And we hope many listeners, if they join, who will be part of what makes the conference so important and so valuable and so fruitful, hopefully. So, Sharon, Vale, and Gabby, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really great discussion about ECRD 2024.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for this opportunity.
Thank you, Julien. Thank you all.